And good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's been a big week. And obviously it's good to be back on here live. I was hoping to try and do some more lives during the week, but I have been a very busy person, obviously. And I just wanted to say too, thank you for everyone who wished me a happy birthday. Yes, it was my birthday on Thursday. 48 circles of the sun, as I say. Well, and yes, look, thank you for all those friends and comrades and people from all around the world that wish me a happy birthday. I actually deeply appreciate it, and it's good to know that we're all in this big community together. So it's a great way to communicate. Well, and if it's anyone's birthday today, happy birthday to them as well. It's a great time of year. It's actually at the moment it's particularly hot outside. It'll be about another 36, 37 degrees today. Not exactly looking forward to that, but we are on the verge of summer. Well, just before I continue, I'm just going to also acknowledge that the original people, the first people of this land, the land of the Dja Dja Wurrung, and of their elders past and present, and also acknowledge that their struggle is part of our struggle as well, the class struggle. They're not separate from us, they're together as one, as us. Black and white unite and fight, we unite as working class against the same forces. So I acknowledge them and a big shout out to them as well. Well, as I said, it's been a big week. Obviously, I've actually had some negotiations with two other companies now. We've commenced for new agreements. They're really digging their heels in at the moment. I won't mention the names for obvious reasons at the moment, but they've obviously digging their heels in to try to have either next to zero pay increases to very, very minimal, which doesn't surprise us at all. Every negotiations as union organised members and shop stewards, as we go into negotiations, we always hear the same old excuse that the company's doing really bad. Sometimes there's an element of truth, and I have dealt with companies that might have just had redundancies. They've lost a lot of their market, and also, which means that obviously which affected both their profit margin and their income as well. So there has been some of those elements of truth, but most of the time, a lot of the companies are saying they're doing really bad all the time. But after it's all over, they're doing really good. They're picking up work everywhere. Surprise, surprise. Nothing's actually surprising for me on that as well. But it's interesting, I actually did this little talk before, no doubt. There's been other good comrades on these live chats and YouTube presentations, and exactly where profit comes from, and why do companies push back against any pay rise at all, even though the governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia would say that actually workers need to increase their wages in order to consume more products, obviously, and generate more surplus value. Well, let's have a look where it's all generated for starters. And I always like this little demonstration. Actually, Professor Richard Wolff gave this where profit's generated from. And I think it's something always vitally important to break that down. So during all these live chats, I always come back to this as well. And I think it's something vitally important. Always remember that labour creates value. Right, you've got your natural value, your raw resources and stuff around the place, such as minerals, timber and all that, but then you have labour, which increases the value of that as well. So look, let's have a look. This is a typical factory, and let's just say A plus B equals C. Right? So A, let's make that 100, and we'll make B 100, which equals C 200. I hope anyone can see that. Sorry. There you go. Now, A represents all the raw materials for the capitalist, for the basic raw materials, the machinery, the factory, the process plants, everything that goes to making the commodity. So that's A. As I said, that was 100. B is labour, the cost of the labour, the workers themselves, which I said is another 100. C is the finished product, the commodity. which is now equals 200. Now, where does the capitalist make profit? Well, first of all, he's made 200. Now, he's got to pay for obvious reasons, for the maintenance, upkeep of the plant, the factory, warehouse, whatever, and for the raw materials for those to make the commodity. Next, once again, the worker, 100. Well, this is where he makes his profit out of B. So what he does, he or she, doesn't matter, gives 50 to the worker and 50 for themselves. That's where they make the profit. So in fact, the worker is not getting the full value of what he's produced. That doesn't change, but that does. When we're going through EBA negotiations or enterprise bargaining agreements or enterprise agreements, or in overseas, I believe it's called contracts, whenever you hear when the company's doing too bad, what they're trying to say is how much they want to try and extract out of the worker. They made 50 this time around. And understand what capitalism always does. It seeks to make it further and further and further profit and increase profit. 50 might have been good for this year, but next year they've got to increase that. So what do they do again? The following year, I'll just turn the page of the notepad. From that 100, cost of labour doesn't change. Capitalists will take 75 and give 25 to the worker. 75 for the capitalist, 25 for the worker. The commodity still stays the same. Now, you give the worker less or beat down their wages. How are they expect to buy what's produced? It's still costing 100, but now they've got less in their hand. They did have 50 the other year, now they've got 25. How do they buy that? Well, this is one of the main antagonisms of capitalism, the contradiction itself. The more capitalists seek further and further profits, the less workers are able to buy what's produced. And that's when we have a crisis of overproduction. Not enough workers are able to consume what's produced anymore. Everything's glutted, the markets are glutted, and from there on effect, we have a systematic crisis of capitalism, a depression, even a recession, because no one is able to afford to what's produced anymore. And the further they reduce the workers' purchasing power, well, the less they were able to consume in the first place. So that's one of the main inherited what am I talking about? That's one of the main inherited contradictions or antagonism in capitalism, and it becomes further antagonistic as the capitalist further pushes the wages and the value of their wages further down. And as I said, once again, we get a systematic crisis of capitalism, a depression, recession. So going in back, what I'll say with negotiations, it doesn't surprise me at all. Obviously, it's been good to be educated in this, and obviously seeing it through my own eyes. But that's how, whenever workers going in for negotiations for a wage rise, that's what they're up against. And the capitalists, I know full well that eating their profit margins is not good for them. They want to expand that. So what do they need to do in order to expand that? Is to reduce their wages. So that's where the struggle will start from there on. The workers are not equal with the employer on this. The only way the workers are able to advance forward if they unite together as a collective and prepared to have a struggle over it. And that's a basic wages and conditions struggle. Like I've talked in many of these previous videos, what this basic wages and conditions struggle is a form of class struggle. It's might be a set of workers against one capitalist, or a whole lot of workers in one industry against a group of capitalists, but it is a basic form of class struggle. So our interests as working class people are completely different from those of the capitalists. Never, ever, ever believe in the myth that our interests are the same as the capitalists. We do not have the same interests. Excuse me for a minute. into that water. There's something in the air. There's a lot of pollens at the moment. Just without getting too off track, I sometimes cough heavily. It's because what I found out what it was. We've got a lot of pollens at the moment. We've got a very bumper season wheat, a very bumper wheat season. And you can just see the fine dust in the air, and obviously with the end of spring here, there's a lot of pollens in the air as well. Some people get hay fever. I was wondering why I got cough at times. It irritates my chest. Going back to what the subject I was talking about there, and this is where we've been facing up every day of our lives, in the sense where for all workers trying to struggle to make ends meet, they've got to pay bills, such as paying the house off, paying electricity, water, gas, you name it, and obviously buying food every week. And what we're also seeing, as profits want to increase, the price goes up. It's not prices do not go up because of wages. Prices go up because the capitalists not just want to maintain their profit, but need to increase profit even more. That's what we're seeing here now on a worldwide scale, on a local level right through to a worldwide scale. So that's just why it always looks like that's what capitalism does. It might even provide an era or some years of stability, but that can only last for so long, and it will once again go back into systematic crisis. Why? The ever pursuit of further and further profit on the expense of the working class and the environment too. Let's not forget the environment. The environment suffers under capitalism because that's what the capitalists do. They're seeking further profit. So we've had just on that. This is nothing new to us for those of us who are involved in struggle, and it's definitely not new to me, especially for all my years of the union movement. I love it when they say, as I said, when companies say they're not doing too well, I just have a quiet chuckle with myself. I said, oh yeah, well at the end of all this, regardless, and then all of a sudden you're doing marvellously after that, increasing your market share and increasing your profits as well. Well, just a few other things now. I just want to talk just other items during the week. Obviously, in Australia here, the investigation into war crimes in Afghanistan is continuing. I believe now 13 service personnel have been called in over the next 2 weeks, over the next fortnight. Looks like they're going to have their medals taken off them, stripped of their medals. Obviously, this is continuing as well with further investigations. We've found out there's 39 crimes have been committed overall. There's no doubt there's probably many more that's been left unreported or is soon yet to be found out. But I want to make a point in this. They're going after the individual that committed these atrocities, or the individuals, sorry, not just one individual, many of them committed these atrocities. But no one's actually talking seriously about taking on the CO, the commanding officers, but also the system itself, and the governments of the day and the current government taking responsibility. They knew full well what's going on. They'd have to have reports. Obviously, they're saying they're trying to cover it up. They'd have reports back. Yes, there was attempted cover-ups, but at the end of the day, someone further down the track would have known about it, and they should have done something back then. In fact, you know what should have happened? We shouldn't have been involved in Afghanistan in the first place. There was no need for us to be there. What was our interest to be there? Interest was because we were told, basically as an outpost of the whole US imperial system, to be involved in that conflict too. Yes, it was over minerals and resources, and there's lots of them there in Afghanistan to have control of that, but mainly to destabilise the region. Like I explained last week, to the north of it's Russia, to the west of it's Iran, to the east of it's China. So that is basically a central crossroads, and what the US imperialists don't want is that to fall into the hands of any of those other countries. Now, for them to put their trade routes through and to develop that further, because if it does, then it becomes a rival economy to the US. And a lot of countries are now jumping on board with China, developing the One Belt, One Road initiative, and peacefully developing their countries along with China. And that is a very big threat to the US capitalist class. So that's why we're there in the first place, just to destabilise the region. If they wanted to get Osama bin Laden, which eventually they did, they would have actually got him a lot earlier. Actually, in fact, it was interesting. The Taliban knew where he was. They could have easily captured him and handed him over, which they were prepared to do. Handed him over to the US authorities. No, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. It wasn't about getting rid of the Taliban. It was all about destabilising that region, and that's what it comes down to. Look, yes, I've heard many people comments about oil and resources, and yes, that was theirs, one of the primary reasons, not the only one. And obviously, because if it was just the only primary reason, you would have had the drill rigs in there straight away, large-scale construction projects, building mines and oil wells, possibly railways, and right there, basically Afghanistan would be a big open mining pit. But that hasn't eventuated yet. Well, what we've seen out of there, what we've seen is the rise in the drug trade, and illegal drugs such as heroin, human trafficking, illegal weapons, you name it, anything sinister. And that's all it's achieved in Afghanistan. And continuing further terrorism. It wasn't about a war on terror. If it was actually a genuine war on terror, that terrorism would have been eliminated a long time ago. But the fact is, guess who funds terrorism? And unfortunately, Australia is just as complicit in this as along with the US. So, well, I think we've nailed that right on the head just there. And if we're going to talk about the war on terror, well, these war crimes, what they've done has actually made the matters worse. If young children have seen what happened, and obviously they did, saw what happened to people being randomly shot, no reason whatsoever, what are we seeing here? You're seeing them, what we're seeing here is development of new forms of terrorism later on in life. They're seeing this and they're actually convinced all they need to be is radicalised by radical Islam, so Wahhabi, jihadi type of Islam, and they think, oh yeah, that's right. White people, Western European nations are evil. US is the evil empire, and that's what they'll see. And the only way they'll go about things is basically, causing problems further down the line. And we've seen those large-scale terrorist attacks in both in France, UK, and no doubt America as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. And as I said, who funds all these groups? Who originally funded? The CIA. If you're wondering where I went silent there. That's where we're at the moment. Is obviously that is still going to be continuing. There's going to be a lot more coming out of the woodwork over the course of the next few months. Also now, something that does flow on from that particular subject, and naming one person who actually exposed a lot of the US war crimes, both in Iraq and Afghanistan's Julian Assange. Actually, I was just watching Dus James's live chat this morning. I had to catch up with his lives as well, and there was a question asking if myself, Dus James, and Caleb Morgan would like to have a discussion about Julian Assange. I don't mind. I'm up for that. I think it's actually just on my opinion. I won't go for too long on this particular subject, but it's disgraceful that our government, the Australian government, well, it's actually not our government, let's face it, it's a government of imperial interests, have done nothing whatsoever. Really, when you think about it, they've done absolutely nothing whatsoever to help Julian Assange at all. They've allowed it to continue. They could have easily stepped in and said, no, sorry, he's an Australian citizen and he's coming back to Australia. Could have done a lot of things, but no. Instead, they've allowed him to be arrested, sent to a kangaroo court. Obviously, they're going to find him guilty. They'll give the US the upper hand to have him extradited to the US, shown trial there, and then thrown in prison for the rest of his life. For what? For exposing US war crimes. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And once again, it is a disgrace. I think it was good to have him to expose all of this because people need to know what was going on. Obviously, the mainstream media only touches on these things, but they don't, because they're all mouthpieces of big business, especially the Murdoch empire. I'll talk a little bit about Murdoch in a minute, but just an update there. But it is an absolute disgrace. There has been a lot of people here in Australia been an uproar about this. Julian Assange has got a lot of support out there. It's a tough. We do need to be on the front foot about this, because if he falls, who's next? I'm just putting it out there. So we do need not just support here from Australia, but worldwide, and we need to put pressures on the Australian government to act on it. Pressures on the US government to never have him extradited, and also on the UK government to release. He can be easily pardoned. I saw a comment the other day. Would Trump consider pardoning Julian Assange? I don't think so. I'm happy to be proven wrong there, and if I'm wrong, happy, and I'm glad he would do it. But I'm not going to hold my hopes up high about that at all. Just also too, going on about the media, Murdoch media. Obviously, that the petition that our former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd developed, the parliamentary petition, over 500,000 signatures, as presented to Parliament. And no doubt the Murdoch empire has now gone to full mode to attack Kevin Rudd and discredit him, along with Malcolm Turnbull, another former Prime Minister, obviously because they expose him. Well, we've all known about what Murdoch's like for years, and taking him on. But I'll give credit where it's due. They're not backing down. Obviously, Sky News, which here in Australia is Murdoch's main media, electronic media or television media outlets, along with Fox News in the US, obviously trying to discredit him there, and all the Murdoch papers from the Smelly Graph in New South Wales to the Herald Scum here in Victoria and elsewhere around the country are trying to demonise. And it's just garbage. It is literal garbage media. I will say this, I don't care if Murdoch finds out personally, but it's not media at all. It's just garbage. There's nothing really good in it. It's nothing factual. It's just hype, and it's just basically there to wind people up and turn people against each other. And it is an actual disgrace. Did you know Murdoch owns 70% of the media here in Australia? And that is a concern. Certainly it is a concern. I also too, I would encourage anyone that does have Sky News or subscriptions to any of these media outlets, be it on electronic, television, even newspapers, stop subscribing, just tear it up. Let's just so that guy where it hurts the most, in the hip pocket, and deprive him of any type of finances as well, as much as possible. That's where it's going to hurt him the most, and also deprive him of any type of influence. I actually don't read him any stuff. I do not bother with any of his stuff. I noticed actually when I was in the supermarket many times, there's piles of his newspapers, and hardly anyone's touching them. So that's a good thing. I mean, we're waking up to the fact how powerful he is. I'm just going to have a sip of this iced coffee, unnamed iced coffee. Oh. So that's just where it is for at the moment. Where that petition is going to go into Parliament, well, both major parties are reluctant to do anything. Gee, we wonder why. I think actually, basically, it's time that both the opposition leader and the Prime Minister toughen up a bit and prepare to take him on. And this, because it's just gone too far. It really is. And as I said, it's just gutter trash. It just completely is trash. No, absolutely no time for it at all. So that's where we're at with the Murdoch side of things at the moment. I've also, just amazing how hot it is outside. It's been for the last 2 or 3 days here around the Bendigo region and around northern Victoria. How hot it is. It's going to be about 37 degrees today. And what's also, there's two things, and interesting, although we've been hammered by COVID-19 this year, I think the whole world has. And I'll talk a little bit about that and just update everybody. Actually, the one thing we need to keep on the agenda as well is systematic climate change. Yes, it's the end of November, we're coming into summer. And obviously there's total fire ban across the northern part of the state today, especially around the central Victoria. So, for Christ's sakes, don't bring out your Webbers and your coals and start making those type of barbecues, and don't light fires like a fireplace to cook your food. It's just, that is worrying, because we are heavily timbered countries around here, heavily timbered country around here as well. So, but it is hot, and we should also remember that climate change is still here. obviously that's still something to be tackled. That's going to be an ongoing struggle for such time. But the climate change is also caught up in the struggle against capitalism as well. I think it's the whole capitalist modes of production, the suit for greater and greater profit, as obviously now we've inherited. I'll just repeat that. For the pursuit of greater profit, we've now inherited a warmer planet. I actually remember when I was a young boy, in the late teens, when greenhouse effect, they used to call it, back in the 1980s, late 80s, early 90s. And I remember the newspapers actually thought of everything was going to be a tropical paradise. We're going to have more rain, everything was going to be lush and green everywhere, we can plant new forests. And obviously, I remember reading an article of it'd be laughable now if you read, but it was serious back then. That's what they thought. Some, not everyone. Obviously, the science has proven differently, and Australia is drying out. We've had some good rains over the winter break. Hopefully, we can keep up. We've had good La Nina effect, not the El Nino, but once we have an El Nino effect, it actually makes matters worse. So obviously, we have a lot of work to do here. It's good to see, though, that there is a push to have much more greener technologies produced, especially energy sources. And obviously, that's also a big sector that needs to be unionised as well. We've obviously, up here in Victoria, we've got a lot of solar farm projects that have been employing a lot of backpackers from overseas, and they're exploited. They're hard to unionise as well. What we're trying to push, I think, there will be a collective push by all the respective unions to actually, one, employ local people for starters, and two, to start having unions, making good union jobs. And it's not just the construction of these projects, it's also the manufacturing of all these products as well, which is another bit of struggle we're having. And tomorrow, on the Working Class Revolt with Dus James, I will be talking about the new was a flow-on from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's called the RCEP, and I think it's the Regional Economic Plan. And I'll need to actually do some more research, but what I have known so far, I won't talk on it too much today. What I do know about is a lot of what worries us here in Australia. Every time we sign on to all these development plans and trade agreements, industry just seems to go offshore. We don't get anything, but we have to import everything, and we'll improve job losses and massive closures of industry here. I'll talk further on that tomorrow. So that's so going back to climate change. Sorry, I was right out of there for a minute. Come back to climate change. It's still on the agenda, and I think we've still, especially during the summer, I think it's going to be particularly hot summer again. Hopefully, we don't have the intense bushfires like we did last year. We are on a fire alert at the moment, high fire risk, and there's a total fire ban around here. So just be careful. Don't go out starting up wood-fired or coal-fired power stations. Don't do that either. But don't go out in barbecues. Such gas, I think you should be able to get away with. So just check with the fire brigade or the country fire associations, or just go on the website and check that out. So yeah, we are on that at the moment. Now, on with obviously with the COVID-19. I was just reading before this some good news. Queensland is going to lift its borders for both New South Wales and Victoria on the 1st of December, which is next week. And it's great news. When I spoke to my sister late last week, or during the week, wishing me a happy birthday. We were talking about the border restrictions. I'm about to actually go up and see my folks there for Christmas in New South Wales. There, it was interesting. It was a few months ago. I just totally wrote Christmas completely off altogether. I was saying to people, don't feel surprised when Christmas off, and I was expecting to just have a quiet Christmas day here. Wasn't doing much at all, but it's good. I now finally get to see them. I haven't seen them for a year now, and yeah, so I'll see my mum and stepdad in Sydney, and I'll see my dad up in Orange there as well, and see how they've been getting on. We still look. It's not to say that we are completely relaxed about it. We do need to be vigilant about these things, but so far so good. The cases have really decreased significantly, and once again we welcome the news of the Queensland government lifting its border on the 1st of December. But I think at the same time too, we don't have to be foolish about things. We still have at times required to wear these face masks. That's if we are in groups. For example, if we go into shops, markets, whatever, we still need to wear them. They're around large gatherings of people as well. Big issue though is people are going to be hitting the beaches during hot weather, which is understandable. I don't know why would anyone go out in the middle of the day though. They'll cook. As I'm quite fair-skinned, and you've seen me, I actually, I barely get a tan. I actually go a lot more red there, but the skin cancer as well is a very big concern. Going back on that, but there are some concerns about if we're people gathering in large crowds, so there's going to have to be a lot of managing it at the moment. But we've had a lot of things, a lot of restrictions lifted now. People are able to get out and about. I know a lot of people coming up from Melbourne over the weekends to visit the regional Victoria, which is understandable. They've been in stage 4 lockdown for a few months there, and it's not an easy thing to do as well. So obviously the first thing they can get out of there, and that's what they did. And obviously seeing life go back to normal. I was actually in Melbourne Thursday night. We had a meeting. I had a meeting to attend to on Thursday evening in the state office, and they got a hotel there. But I decided to go for a little walk just later on. Something to eat. It was nice to eat out. But people actually in Melbourne, mostly everyone's still wearing these out in the street. So I decided to do the same as well, just out of respect and common courtesy as well. Obviously, I don't have COVID-19, but it's helped to do my bit to reduce the risk, especially in cities where there's a lot more concentrated people, like regional areas. So that's great news. I think at the moment we'll just need to turn along quite nicely. I'm having all the January off because I needed to have it off. I've been flat out all busy. We might have had lockdowns and restrictions here in regional Victoria, but it's been non-stop for me as well. I've had the advantage of working from the office because I'm the only one that works out of there. And on top of that, I can still go get out and about and see sites, wave the union flag, etc., and serve the members to the best of my ability. So that's it's been non-stop. I've had roster days off, I've had public holidays, but I actually hadn't had any annual leave at all. So I do need to have a few weeks off. I think it'd be good to have a few weeks off and enjoy it, switch off and enjoy the world for once. So that's where we're at the moment. Tomorrow, obviously, once again, I just want to remind everyone, it'll be 12 p.m. our time here in Victoria. Well, they're live with Dus James, Working Class Revolt. I will be talking about these regional development agreements. That's going to be a big discussion, and obviously other current affairs as well. We'll have a chat with him, maybe do another live with Caleb to talk about Julian Assange, which I mentioned before. I think that'll be a great discussion as well, especially about freedom of speech, etc. Talking about freedom of speech, it's quite interesting. Over the course of this whole year, I know there's some people out there are questioning COVID-19. Just for the week, I had to deal with someone who basically didn't want to wear a mask at work because he had his personal beliefs. And I explained to him, well, his personal beliefs doesn't override the common good of everybody else. Secondly, it's a requirement by law if you're at work to still wear it. The only time at work you don't wear it's either it's going to affect your PPE, your personal protective equipment, or you're doing high repetitive work, or if you have a pre-existing medical condition such as respiratory or a skin problem. And although they don't have to require any certification for a doctor, I still find it advisable just go and get some certification from a doctor. So basically to cover themselves, yeah. Well, he went on about it and he claimed, the unions are taking a wrong direction. I explained to him, no, we did not make that law. It was Department of Health, Human Services under the Emergency Act made that rule, not us. What we're trying to do is make sure everyone's safe. And safety is the number one priority for us. We don't want to see any worker be sick, or die, or get badly injured. And, well, he kept talking about his personal beliefs, and I thought, here we go. And then he proceeded to tell me the whole COVID-19 was a complete utter hoax. Now, I wish I was George Galloway with that red button, because I would have just went, hit it. You would have heard the alarm, and I would just say, Ward 5, orderlies, Ward 5. I think we will understand what we're talking about free speech. Sometimes I think we should be able to, yes, have an orderly discussion about things. I'm not opposed to having an orderly discussion about things. But when it goes a little bit too far to the extreme, sometimes I think, well, we shut them down or not. I'm sometimes a little bit 50-50 about it. Because I do respect, because it can work both ways. We shut someone down that could possibly happen to us in the future, especially doing these type of things. And I believe now Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are monitoring a lot of these lives now and prepared to shut them down or completely. We're going to shut down the accounts completely, or just take off one live for certain obvious reasons. So it's something. I think what's going to happen out of this, and I was having a think for it the last couple of days, how we combat this. I think it's through our education. And unfortunately, there are people out there who think it is still a hoax. They think it's, their freedom's been eroded because they have to wear a face mask. I'm like, come on, guys, it's just a face mask. I know it's a pain to wear it at times. I don't like wearing them, but hey, we're not asked to go get locked in a cell. It's not asking. They're not asking to give away your life savings or something. It's just asking to wear a mask when it is required. That's all it is. Now, if once again, if you've got a medical condition or ongoing medical condition, we accept. But that's where that stands. And I just think, well, come on, it's only that. It's not going to harm you. But when I saw these anti-mask rallies, anti-vaxxers from a distance, and I think also that obviously there's a lot of distrust in authority, which is understandable. I get that. But obviously we do, and also too now out of anti-vax, the anti-vax crowd is obviously speaking more out because of vaccinations are coming into being. Obviously now we've seen them being produced on a large scale. We're hopefully by they're saying by March the latest next year we'll be able to have access to them, which will actually be in time before our major flu seasons again. I can understand why there's distrust. I get that. I completely get that. But the science is there. The science actually tells this virus is very rare. Yes, if you've got a pre-existing condition, and you're actually at more higher risk of passing away than someone that's completely healthy. But there have been people who have been completely healthy who have passed away from this disease as well. If you're a younger person, yes, you are able to recover. You might be able to recover from the immediate effects of it and try and lead some sort of normal life. But it's the long-term effects that it's going to be the next big study of this virus. It is no, to me, it's no joke. This is serious. It is real. Just look at the UK. Just look at the US. Look at Sweden here. They didn't do any type of social distancing, lockdown measures, and it's out of control there. People say no, it's not. Oh, yes, it is. And more people are dying as well. And in Europe, and I'm actually grateful once. All the states that managed to get on top of it here in Australia. I wish there was a coordinated plan, I think nationally, although I was over the politics being played by the federal government about this. It was wrong what they did, trying to make political mileage out of people suffering. Instead, it was left up to the states, but they had to do some radical control measures. Now, the things been going on behind the scenes, sure, there has been a lot of things going on behind the scenes. New South Wales government, guess what they've been doing behind the scenes? Allowing fracking to go ahead in a lot of areas in northwestern New South Wales. That's right, because people are unable to mobilise during that time. What an advantage for them to use. They've been doing a lot of those things, and I'm sure there's some insidious things that happen. That's what capitalism does. I find capitalism insidious, but that's what it does. And as I said, once again, I get why people distrust certain authority. I think you look at the same time, let some common sense and logic come about this. We have a pandemic, and we needed to get on top of this as soon as possible. I'm about to cough again. Damn these pollens. And we do need to get on top of it. And look, our personal beliefs do not override the common collective good. I just want to make that loud and clear, and that's where I stand. You're entitled to your views, you're entitled to your beliefs. I'm not going to impose that. I'm not going to oppose that ideal. You're entitled to that. But what you're not entitled to have that override the common good. Now, as I said, it's great not to have to wear a mask most of the times now, and it feels good, and especially with someone with facial hair or a beard. Those of us who have beards, or those who've got mustaches, it is quite a nuisance having this covered over here at times. And yeah, you can feel it actually quite irritating, but we have to wear it. We have to wear it. So it's not going to kill us from wearing it. So I wanted to actually explain to those people who are anti-mask, it's not going to kill you wearing it. Yeah, just wear it. For Christ's sakes, where it's required. And I don't have to carry on like a pork chop like you did as well. Entitled to your view, but the science is there. Along with the anti-vaxxers. And I just put a question up on Facebook yesterday about who would take the vaccine, yes or no. And I actually said yes, shared it. And then I've seen on my one I've shared, my page, a lot of people said no, and some people went right off about it. And a lot of people said yes, I want to be immune. I want to actually make sure too. I want to see my parents without having to worry if they're going to get sick. And fair enough. So those who are anti-vax, I can understand you've got suspicions about things, but look, the reality is in the end of the day, vaccines do have worked. We were actually a #1 world leader at one stage, eliminated many of these viruses, or actually made us immune against many of these viruses. And I'll be one of the first in line. I'd love to get, like George Galloway, I'd like to get the Russian vaccine. I believe that's pretty kick-ass, that one. So, yeah, well, as soon as it's out, I'm definitely going to be there in the line, putting my hand up to be vaccinated against it. Because another thing too, I don't want it myself. Honestly, we've got enough diseases and viruses around. And even when I've had the flu, that really knocks me for a 6 as well. So I don't wish to have any of those. It's not a pleasant thing to go through. No, there you go. I've put it out there. That's where I stand with it. I'll leave it at that. But as I said, those of you who have been opposing to what I had to say, well, look, fine, we'll leave it at that. But don't have to carry on like we just did either. Mind you, a lot of those rallies, and I'm going to actually, this may rub a bit of salt in the wounds to those who have actually come across my lives. But a lot of those rallies are actually hotbeds of fascism. It's interesting how some of them, and now actually, I'm going to get onto a roll here. It's interesting how some of them are going on about authority, this is fascist, etc. But the thing is, if it comes down to socialist revolution, guess what they'll be siding with the fascists. A lot of these people are actually outright anti-working class. Not just anti-communist, but also just despise it. You look at them. They think they're so good and, they think they're above everybody. But when it comes down to the actual class struggle, they actually will side with the fascists. So they're quite full of contradiction. They want to accuse people of fascism, and at the same time, they're siding with them. Go figure. Yeah, and I've noticed that, and the far right have been using these rallies as a recruitment ground as well. Just wanted to actually put it out there. Libertarians, a lot of them will going to be fascists as well. I know that for a fact. And then look, the science is there. When they go on about communism and that, they're more hostile to it. So there's no third way. I don't like, everyone think, oh, well, no, I'm not like that. I'm not this and that. There's no such thing as the third way. Socialism or barbarism. And these people will side with barbarism. And let's make that point, Frank. So if they are listening into this, you're in our sights. We know exactly what you're up to. And yeah, so obviously you got a choice. You either side with us or you side with the fascists. Yeah, simple as that. So, and obviously, Dave, actually, Dust James comment on there. A big shout out to Dust if he's watching this as well. And if later on, if you're watching this, big shout out to you. I'll actually got to send you a message too. He was actually talking about fascism, about the Confederate flag. I actually just want to make a comment about the Confederate flag because I mentioned it the other day when that working class revolt 2 weeks ago with Caleb. Now, I mentioned because going back to the SAS soldiers or commandos that committed those war crimes, and there were some of them actually holding up the Confederate flag. Actually, some had the swastika as well as that, and they got widely condemned. Now, I did make a comment that's got nothing to do with Australia, but people, I just want to actually take your time a little back. I remember actually when I was in my teenage years at high school, the Confederate flag was actually marketed for clothing and for alcohol, etc. There was an alcoholic drink called Rebel Yell. It was a bourbon. It came out. I don't know if anyone recalls that in my age, but yeah, I think it disappeared by the mid '90s. But it had the ads on TV, and it was all cool about being a rebel. They had the music with it, roll music, and people were identifying that way. So it was part of a marketing image as well. The other one, they actually used to have belt buckles, and it was cool to wear something with the Confederate. Well, it was actually the Confederate battle flag, flag of North Virginians, Army of Robert Lee. And they used it a lot for clothing. It was like an image. But they're not realising that was the symbol of the slave owner. Actually, it's a battle flag. So I should be a little bit more correct. The actual Confederate flag is not the one with the cross in it. I believe it was a star with the red and blue flag. Yeah, but this one was it was actually used on the field of battle, because back then, when that type of battle during the 1860s, that time they used the flag bearer. That was where the company or the brigade or the platoon, whatever, that's where the field of market was as they're marching up towards the enemy lines, their opponent lines. So that was a distinct flag so they can see it. That's why it was designed that way. But it's been used to market measure, and unfortunately, a lot of white people, working class people, identified with it. They thought it was a symbol of rebellion, against authority. There was a sign of shock. Yeah, we're against authority. And unfortunately, pitted a lot of people against each other as well. I don't agree with it. I think it should be put in a museum, explained properly for what that represented, and just obviously, do away with any of that marketing image. Rebel Yell Bourbon's no longer around with us anymore. I don't really care. I don't touch the stuff, but But look, I think it's commented on that. But for people who are using it here in Australia, well, one, I'm going to be very careful too. There's a particular motorcycle club that uses it. It's their club emblem. Okay, and I'll just be warned, if anyone that does come across my lives, if you are using it, if you're not a member of that club, be warned. It won't be me you need to worry about. You need to them, because if you're not a club member, they will take it off you accordingly. And I'll leave that matter at that. They use it; it's part of their club emblem as well. But for everyone else, and traditionally everyone else that does use it for political purposes, generally means they're white supremacist or fascist as well. I think it's disgraceful to waive that. To be honest with you, it should be confined to the dustbins of history. Yep, certainly if you're in the United States. Yeah, obviously on a tour of the southern states as well, like around Virginia. That certainly pop into the museums, and that's where that should be, not out there being displayed and such. So I wanted to put that out there. Actually, another thing I want to just put out there as well. I know, some years back, it wasn't that long ago. I remember actually people thought it was quite funny to actually change the 13 stars on the Confederate flag to hammer and sickles or to love hearts. And look, stop mucking around with imagery like that. It's just it. Look, I can see if you're trying to be funny, well, it wasn't being funny at all. That flag is not being funny, especially to Black Americans as well. That's not funny. And a lot of people who actually who actually are proper Civil War buffs, but also the other thing, who knew what the Civil War was about, and those descendants of those who fought for the Union Army, obviously take that very seriously. And those of us who are just generally struggling against capitalism, we take things seriously. And to me, it's not funny. If you're trying to be funny, it's not. It's not. It's to be taken a little bit seriously. It's like putting a love heart on the swastika. I mean, someone did that too, and it's just like, what was all that supposed to mean? Yeah, no, it wasn't being funny. So I just wanted to put that out there as well, that it has been used as a marketing tool. That was a cool thing to have. You're a rebel, a rebel without a clue, basically. I like to actually throw that there as well. So, in the words of Frank Zappa, I'm here to offend, if you are offended. I'd like to actually just also off through the week as well. Obviously, we're coming into that Christmas time, and it was Thanksgiving in the US. And look, happy Thanksgiving to all the US comrades as well. So the time of getting together with family, if you could. Certainly, you guys were going into very difficult year over there with COVID-19, and obviously now with after the US presidential elections. I see Trump still trying to hold on. I think he's finally conceding defeat of the electoral vote. Says Biden's he'll leave office. I think somehow someone's explaining a few facts of life to him. Although I've been watching the rubbery figures on YouTube, Boris Johnson and Trump, quite funny. With that, and it just shows you how deluded they are as well. But at the same time, I think if people just want to get on with their lives about it. And I made a comment about the US elections, about Biden being elected as US president. People didn't vote Democrat because they loved the Democrats and they thought this is going to be a force of social change, etc. I think basically a lot of people just voted for Joe Biden because they wanted to get rid of Trump. That was it. Nothing more, nothing less. They just wanted to see the back of Trump for whatever reason. I found Trump actually, quite frankly, revolting, repulsive, noxious. And I just look, and I can understand people wanting to do that. I think we've got to be very clear, those of us on the left understand the reason why people voted for Biden, not because they actually believed in Biden, what he said, or thought he was a wonderful person. It's just because they want to get rid of Trump. That's what it comes down to. But because, as I said, the struggle has got to continue. But most important thing out of elections, and also, we're just here in Australia or in Victoria, we recently had local government elections, and we managed, out of the 20 union candidates we had running for the very respective local governments, 3 got up. But look, it's a start. We have to build our infrastructure. And one of them was actually one of our shop stewards, and he did well. He did really well. So it's a good start, good learning curve. But the most important thing is, when we've actually talked about elections, should communists participate in elections? Certainly, absolutely. I think we do need to, regardless if you're a member of a party, or if you're amongst us, you're a member open to be a party or not. Doesn't matter. I think the most important thing is we keep the message and use it as a channel to connect with more working class people and put the proper working class message out there. If we're elected into Parliament, yeah, it's a bonus, because that way we've got access to everybody. So it's great way we can use it, but also organise the working class as well. Organise them into a force to eventually, on the historical path, seize power. And I think it's vitally important that we put it for a big key demand. And I totally agree with this key demand what Caleb Maupin's been talking about. There's a government of action that fights for working families, and we certainly need governments of action that fight for working families here in Australia, that will actually rebuild a new, or not rebuild Australia, but build a new Australia, able to mobilise the population. I think that's something we've always should put out as a key demand. We talk about nationalise this and nationalise that industry. Yep, they're good demands, they're great demands, but I think through that was what we can use as a government of action that will fight for working families, that will nationalise these industries such as the energy sector, communications, transport, and that for the public good. For the benefit of the public, not for the very few. It's a good demand to put out there, and we can use those elections. It's not just a matter, and I think a lot of time people confuse, it's just a matter of getting some bums on seats in Parliament. Wrong. I think we've got to, yes, we need people in there, but that's so to expose, one, the bourgeois parliamentary system for what it really is, but two, to organise all of us. And it's most important thing, if we have people elected in the Parliament, so all 3 levels of government here in Australia, that's the local, state and Commonwealth, it's got to be backed up by mass action. So the organisation, the mass action side of it is vitally important. You don't just change a government, you need to change the system. And if we do change a government, it needs to be backed up from there on by mass action. We've got to be prepared to hit the streets, do all sorts of things, take matters into our hands, not in a nasty way, I mean in a legal way, but I've got to be careful how I said that, but just what I mean is, like, we could be starting co-ops. We could be, business closes down, wants to move offshore. Fine. Tell the capitalists, you can go offshore, off you go, but you're leaving everything here. Get these workers back to work, and it'll be a community worker-owned enterprise. And also, too, organise the community, working class people, talk about how we're going to have a proper planned economy and how we're going to plan it all together. So we don't just have worker co-ops for the hell of it. What we do need to use them for as part of a centrally planned economy as well, and part of that struggle, all connected, including union struggles as well. It's all got to be connected up and develop a proper strategy to change Australia and build a new Australia as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's got quite interesting, obviously, in by September next year, our Commonwealth government will be from September next year to about May 2022. The Commonwealth government will be able to call for a national election or federal election. I don't know when. There's been all sorts of speculation that possibly call for an early election, so maybe in September that year or October, if their time is good at the moment. For them, they obviously sniff the political wind, but they can go for the very latest up to May 2022. So we'll just see how that plays out. That'll be interesting. And also our state elections in the year, I believe, 2023, November 2023. So got some organising to do there. Well, look, it's nearly 11 o'clock here. I'm just going to finish off. I love this book as well, White Communism by Morse Olden, and also flows up from this book too. I still highly recommend this book, History of the Three Internationals by William Z. Foster. This is a great introduction to Marxism as well. It's a big book, yes, short, thick, but it's a great book to read, easily read. Love his stuff as well. But I want to read this out from this. I'll always love this little melody. It's actually called The Melody. It goes, you are a worker. You have had a job for a number of years. Your pay was not high, but you managed to get along. You were a faithful worker. You never shirked. Perhaps you saved up a few dollars against a rainy day. Perhaps you married and raised a family. You were decent, law-abiding. And I will have another sip of this unnamed iced coffee. That wasn't a sip, it's a couple of gulps. One nice morning, you are told your services are no longer needed. In plain words, you are fired. You are thrown out. There is a depression, they say. The employer has no more work for you. He cuts operations or he shuts his plant altogether. While you remain without a livelihood, he goes to his country estate or abroad to have a good time. He does not care to think what will happen to you. You plainly do not exist for the company any longer. It has no obligations towards its unemployed. And yet, come to think of it, you are not you are not a stranger to this factory or mill or shop. You and the like of you have built it. You and the like of you have created all the machinery, all the raw material, and all the fuel which is necessary to run an industry. You and the like of you are the live power that puts motion into the dead matter of every industrial undertaking. It is your blood, your sweat, your muscle, your brain that is sunk into every piece of goods produced. You have much at stake in this establishment, your whole life. It is yours more than the owner's. It is part of your very self. Suppose now, when you are told to go, you refuse to budge. Suppose many of you get together and say that you are going to stay where you belong and continue working because this is the only source of your livelihood. Suppose you say you are going to produce for the benefit of yourself and others. This thought may be strange to you, yet consider what would happen. The owner, who has never worked and who does not know how to work, would call the police. Most probably this riot squad would appear. Perhaps the militia would be called out. There would be clubs and riot guns and tear gas bombs galore. You would be clubbed and shot at, and many of you in prison, tried and convicted for the sole crime of wanting to continue working at the machines with the materials you and the like of you have produced. Has it ever occurred to you that such state of affairs is wrong? And has it ever occurred to you, I think we need to start considering doing away with capitalism altogether? I'll leave it at that. And that's it for this morning, folks. And once again, thank you for joining on Arctic Angel. Hello. I'm just about come to the end of it, but this will load up within the next 24 hours. That's out of my control at the moment. I'm trying to work out how to load these up a lot quicker. But at the end of the day, I think it is. I think we need to put the primary question is, and I think the question is this: if we want a better world, which a better world is possible, Don't you think it's about time we get rid of this outdated system called capitalism? I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Dare to struggle and dare to win, everybody.